Illinois again. This was really fucked up. This was really fucked up. It was 80. I live in Seattle right now. It was 80 degrees 2 days ago, which also is global warming and it's really terrifying. But I was like, okay, New England, upstate New York, yeah. Okay, anyway, I'm sorry. I'm gonna stop bitching. Something you're like, we have to live in it. So yeah, I just want to thank everybody at the Women's Center and the Gender Center for having me as part of Surface. It's really happy to be here. I'm very happy to be here. And yeah, so this is also, I'm going to give you a little insight, like secret into how this stuff like this happens sometimes. So I know, how many people saw the Art and Practice of Disability Justice on the flyer? Mostly everybody. Okay. Like 2 days before, I was like, wait, I remember there was a whole series of emails where I was like, well, I don't know if that's a 2-hour workshop. Maybe I could just read from the memoir. And I was just like, that's great. So anyway, so that's what happened. I prepared like 2 different things for this hour that we have together, which is not that long. I'm from Central Massachusetts. We talk really fast because if you're a woman of color in Central Mass, no one's listening to you, so you have to get it out really, really fast. So I'm going to try and pack 2 things into 1 hour with Q&A without talking so fast that nobody can understand what I'm saying. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Great. Awesome. Okay. So I do want to start off by talking a little bit about disability justice because I know as a chronically ill, queer person of color, most places I go, everyone's like, that sounds really cool. I have no idea what that is, and I really want to know because disability, chronic illness, mental health, neurodivergence, and deafness are, of course, really huge issues in all of our communities. And we don't get a chance to talk about it hardly ever. Where I talk to a lot of people who are like, yeah, there was one article on Black Girl in the Interest 2 years ago that changed my life. I have not seen anything since then. In terms of looking at issues around disability in cutie pot communities and other communities. So, am I talking too fast?
No.
Okay, so I have a PowerPoint. Please don't be scared. It will not be a million pieces of tiny ass font that nobody can read. I want to actually start off with an image because I think that part of disability justice is understanding that, and I think this is especially important in an elite university like this, is understanding that there's actually many ways of learning and being intelligent, many of which are not the ones that are awarded in institutions like this. And one of those is learning through imagery and beauty. And I also want to give a shout out to beauty as a form of resistance, especially in femme of color communities. I don't know if folks know Raina Gossett's work, the amazing Black trans activist who's making a film about Marsha P. Johnson's life. Right. Okay, so I got the privilege of seeing her talk about her film, Happy Birthday, Marsha, a month ago, and she was talking about sustainability in the lives of trans women of color, and she said this thing which I'd never heard, which was, for folks who don't know, Marsha P. Johnson was one of the many transgender women of color who were the rioters at Stonewall, who threw bricks in the face for cops that gave birth to modern-day queer and trans liberation. They keep snapping. Like, I can't, I don't think how this going. Everyone's like, okay, snap, snap. I'm like, I actually can't do it, because then I would fake it. I'm like, yeah. Raina told a story where she said, Marsha P. Johnson, who, Black transgender revolutionary organizer, who lived with chronic illness and was medicalized with mental health from oppression for her entire life. Raina was like, Marsha made a new flower crown out of fresh flowers every day of her life till she was dead. And that was when she was a street-involved, houseless person. That was at many, many points of not having access to economic wealth. And that's seen as a sideline, but that's actually one of the ways in which Black and brown femme people and other people resist every day that's seen as trivial, but which is actually some of the lifeblood of how we survive. So, thank you. Okay, that's good. I was nervous. I was like, oh shit, all these people. So this image is up here. Can everybody in the back see this kind of? A little bit. Okay, so I can email this to folks and I'm also going to describe it. This is an image, so on the left-hand side you see a darker-skinned Black person wearing prison oranges who's a wheelchair user, and they're holding the hand of a Palestinian person who's a new amputee, and they're holding hands. And then in the background it says, disability justice means resisting together from solitary cells to open-air prisons. To exist is to resist. Right? Okay. So the story behind this is that I have the great honor of working with a collective called Sins Invalid, which some people may have heard of, some people may not have, but we're based out of Oakland, California, and we got started 10 years ago as a group of mostly queer, not all, but disabled people of color, doing performance art about sexuality. And the two folks who founded Sins Invalid, Leroy Moore, who's a Black disabled poet, performance artist, hip-hop activist, and Patricia Byrne, who does not get enough credit, but please remember her name. She's a Haitian and Japanese genius, power femme, kinky, disabled, organizer, revolutionary. You know, when I first met them, I was like, why did you guys, if you guys want to create the disability justice movement, why did you start with performance art? And Patty was like, look, I've been an anarchist Marxist femme of color in Oakland, California for all of my life. And she's like, and I am somebody who needs 6 hours of personal care assistance a day to live and is independent, and I'm in a power chair. And she's like, I can lecture these revolutionaries of color who think they're able-bodied or who are able-bodied about why they should care about my life till forever, and they won't give a fuck, or I can do 3 minutes of performance art and I can change their memories and dreams from the inside out. And I'm going to show an example of that in a minute, but the story of this image is that this comes from a time 2 years ago where we had made a film as Citizen Ballot about our work, because what we do a lot of things, but one thing that we do is put on big performances that take a year to put on about eugenics and Harriet Tubman and resistance and First Nations ideas of disability. And a lot of times colleges will be like, hey, can you bring the show to us? And that's disability justice right there, because we were like, actually, we do a show that's fully accessible to 15 performers of different disabilities and has high quality ASL, actual wheelchair access, not just, oh, there's just one step, so I guess that's okay. You know, all of the things, and that takes a lot of time and money, and we know that most places we can go don't have that. And I'm not even in the place of thinking about it, because even saying, so, you're not just flying out the performers, you're also flying out their personal care attendants, so that is 2 different plane tickets, blah, blah, blah. We make this movie, it gets accepted to the Vancouver Queer Film Festival. We're all really excited. Around 2 months before the film festival is happening, we realized that like a lot of queer film festivals, they've accepted money from the Ministry of Tourism of Israel, saying, come to Israel, it's a wonderful place for gay people, right? Which is known as pinkwashing, which is often used to camouflage the violence of the Israeli state against Palestinians, right? This is also during a summer where the West Bank was getting bombed, and among everything that was happening, there was a bomb that fell on a rehab hospital that had tons of disabled people, killed 60 of them, and disabled a lot of other people. So this is a moment that when we look at the mainstream majority white disability rights movement, is not seen as a disability issue, right? But there we were like, these folks gave us $800 to come up, it's gonna pay for us all to get in the van, to be able to cross the border, meet with disabled communities in Vancouver and speak. We don't have a lot of resources, what do we do? And we have, you know, and this is one thing about disability organizing, is that everything takes 5 times as long, and that's kind of what actually makes it stronger, which is counterintuitive to a lot of us, because we've grown up in situations where we have to do everything really, really fast for our own survival. One of the blessings that able-bodied folks can learn from those of us who are chronically ill, sick, and mad is that actually you build stronger movements when you go slower and when you don't leave people behind. We're not a liability, we're actually, you know, brilliant. So, so after, you know, lots and lots and lots of like Skype, because disabled people love Skype, because I'm like, I can't get out fast today, I'm on the toilet. And they're like, okay, great, we'll hook it up. IBS realness. We came to the decision to pull out of the festival, stay away, use it as an organizing opportunity, fundraise to make sure we could still go to Vancouver and do the event that we did in a community-based setting, and to use it as a way of drawing connections between disability, ableism, the prison industrial complex, and the ways in which the Israeli war in Palestine has disabled thousands of people on all sides of the continent. Right? So this is disability justice. And I'm just going to scroll a little bit. This is my one thing that's a tiny ass font, but I do want to say real quick, I'm going to read it out loud. This is something, so when I want to name lineage, because it's really important to talk about where these ideas come from and who created them, not out of a sense of colonial control or like, this is mine, I'm going to charge you for it, but just because black and brown people are ripped off all the time. So, back in 2004, there was a group called the Disability Justice Collective that consisted of Patty Byrne, Leroy Moore, Sebastian Margaret, who's a white or physically and mentally disabled person, and Mia Mingus. And they basically were like, we're sick of the single issue disability rights movement. Let's create something that's as intersectional as we are and that's revolutionary. And we came up with the term disability justice. And of course, this is what happens in movements. You fast forward 10 years later. And and you have like, everyone's like just throwing it around, and you have people being like, yeah, disability justice. And I'm like, but I can't get into your space. So is it disability justice? You know, the Society for Disability Studies, which is an academic disability conference, I think 3 years ago they changed their theme for the year was disability justice, and I'm like, there's nobody speaking who's of color. Like, it's still white. You know, often like there's some disabled folks, you know, doing the work in that conference, but there's also often a lot of non-disabled folks who are doing stuff. And there also was no, hey, this is where this idea came from. So I think it's really important to name that this is where that term came from, this is why it came from, and to say, like Patty did, disability justice centers the lives and leadership of people of color, of queer and gender nonconforming people with disabilities. Knowing that the liberation of the othered body and mind from the webbings of ableism, white supremacy, heteronormative patriarchy, colonial resource exploitation, and industrial capitalism leads to the liberation of all people. And this next bit is in all caps. It is a movement-building framework, not an academic theory. When people invisibilize the leadership of people of color and of queer and gender nonconforming people with disabilities, it's not disability justice. So I'm not bitter. I'm not. So that's, and I mean, I know that's a lot of words, so I want to talk a little bit about what this can look like in real life. A lot of times people are like, this is dope, how do I join the movement? And I'm like, actually, it's not a national organization where you pay $35 worth of dues. It's, you know, because those things are inaccessible in so many ways for all of us. I think disability justice happens when you talk to your 3 friends who are disabled, chronically ill, mad, or deaf, and you go, hey, let's get together at the kitchen table once a month, and like, let's talk about our lives and what we need. And that's actually one part of how movements get born. There's a lot of ways how movements get born. I live in Seattle, which I know is now, people are like, oh, that's such a queer disabled hotspot. And I'm like, no. And first of all, and second of all, I remember 5 years ago when I first started visiting Seattle, and my friend E.T. Russian, Ellery, who I've done work in since, was like, yeah, and a double amputee and a gender nonconforming white person was like, yeah, I just started having a thing called Crip Your Hangout, where I was like, let's just get together and be disabled, you know, and like see what happens. And so I think that that's disability justice. I think things that are also feminized and invisibilized and devalued as labor, i.e. care, is disability justice. So actually doing the 2-step of both figuring out care collectives, figuring out interdependence, figuring out how you create childcare, figuring out, hey, like, how do we drive this? I need to go to the acupuncturist twice a month and I don't have a car. Like, how do we work that out? That is disability justice. And it's also more than that because, here's my quote over here. My friend Amber Vora, who is a queer, disabled South Asian femme in Seattle, she said on Facebook the other day, she's like, sometimes I think the only reason disability justice activists haven't transformed the entire world yet is because we're so busy organizing fundraisers for each other to stay alive. Seriously, we're awesome in the way we come together to support each other, and that in and of itself is revolutionary. And yet, imagine how much we could do if our community had its needs met, and able-bodied people moved up to understand that we exist and to understand disability, and so we could focus the love, creativity, and power we have to the next level. Y'all still with me?
Yeah.
Cool. You can ask questions in a second. Do the lights go down?
Yes.
Okay, I want to play a video real quick. Okay, so this is 2 minutes, and there's no trigger warnings I can think of. And this is a short opening movement piece. The dancer Rodney Bell is a Maori indigenous dancer, wheelchair-using dancer, and the voiceover is by Patty Byrne, who's the person I've been talking about a lot. And I'm not going to say too much about this, except that before, it's like the hair club for men. Before I was, no, that metaphor doesn't work. Anyway, before Ferguson's, I was somebody who went to go see them. And like a lot of disabled and chronically ill folks of color, whether our disabilities are apparent to the outside world and ourselves or less so, I've been chronically ill since 1998, and it really took me till 2008 to feel like I could come out about it all the way. Because before that, I had other friends who were chronically ill, queer folks of color, and we'd be like, yeah, I have fibromyalgia too, it sucks, right? But we didn't really know how to embody space or inhabit space or create space where we could really come out about it all the way, instead of just being like, it's this secret private thing that I don't like about myself, right? And so anytime there's cultural production and movement building, it's kind of a chicken or the egg thing. it's not going to happen unless there's space for it, and then you have to create the space for it to happen, for it to actually happen. So what I mean by that is that in Toronto, where I lived for a decade, my first decade of being chronically ill, there was disability activism. It was pretty much all white. Some of it was queer and gender nonconforming, and that gave me some life, but I also was like, my disability story is not separable from the fact of my father's migration from Sri Lanka as a queer migrant. And all of his, internalized racism, why am I in Massachusetts? There's a lot of snow. I'm really, I don't have a college degree, and I'm trying to work it out as a brown man in Worcester, Massachusetts in 1985. My mom is an Irish Roma working class woman who grew up living in an industrial small town, who's a polio survivor who did not get medical treatment because she didn't have money, who grew up to be somebody who had intergenerational trauma and who passed it on. Those are all of my stories, right? And like a lot of disabled folks of color, we don't come out about it because we already have enough shit to deal with, and we're like, we're not going to name this other thing. And even my mom, who is Roma but white passing, polio her entire life, has only started saying the word disabled. Actually, she doesn't say it. My dad says it about her. She said a hip replacement and cancer for 20 years. So she's like, yeah, your mom's disabled. And I'm like, yeah, okay, great, awesome. But I remember when I was 18, we were like taking a little walk, because like free movement, whatever. And she'd be like, I can't really walk more than 100 feet without pain. And I was like, no, you've worked 3 jobs my whole life. I had no idea. And she was like, well, what am I going to do? Ask for accommodations? They're going to fire me. Like, they won't stand up for the ADA. They're going to fire me, and they're going to hire somebody they don't have to pay money for. My point with all this is that when I went to Sin's performance in the Bay, and I'm really not trying to sound like a Sins and Ballad evangelicist, but I am going to pick up the work. I went by myself because I was like, this is so important to me, and I don't know how to explain to anybody how important it is that I go to this show of queer folks and queer folks of color talking about illness and sex. And this is the opening piece, and I kind of like cried, came, and had my life changed. That's what we want to talk about. Okay, here we go. When it's not really like, I didn't actually come into church.
Is this safe? Are you safe? Are you sufficiently insulated from us, the deviant, the disabled, the non-normative, the crippled? Or might you become stained by our leaking needs? Are we, the disabled, the unconscious visceral threat to the able-bodied myth of emotional predictability and bodily control? Is that why you settle most comfortably in your mental lazy boy as we labor to shield you from our differences? Is that why you contain us in institutions, police our bodies and movements, abuse us, exterminate us, eliminate us even before birth? Do we frighten you so? Must we frighten you? We carve you our chests to hold your projections, cupped repositories for your fear of difference, your denial of your need for help, your terror of being vulnerable. A wise woman once said, fear is behaving as though truth were not the truth. Living requires risk, as does the hottest of desires. We live in continual risk. And tonight, we are coming home.
Yeah. There's more. Yeah. Can we bring the lights back up? Thanks. Okay. Oh, I'm doing good for time. Okay. So, if everyone's silent, it's okay. Did folks have like initial reactions or responses or stuff that moved you out of that piece? And I know that often you watch the 3-minute clip and you're like, I'm still digesting it, so that's okay. But I just wanted to throw it out there to see if anyone had anything they wanted to throw back in. No? Okay, we can do it later. So I want to leave room for a conversation and Q&A, but I want to go over a few things really quickly. One of them is, this might sound really basic, but I want to define what we mean by disability, because often people are like, right now, I don't think it will last that long because I don't think I'm cut out to be in academia full time without going on a killing spree. But I have this job working at one of two centers that's not the Access Center where you try and get your accommodations later and they go, haha, no. But I work at a center that's by and for disabled and deaf students to create culture called the D Center at the University of Washington. And I'm sure you're familiar with this, like many folks come into this going, am I disabled? Does this count? Am I taking up space from somebody else? Right? So I want to talk about the sensitive definition of disability, which is we define disability broadly to include people with physical impairments or differences, people who belong to a sensory minority, so someone who's blind, who communicates tactilely, who is deafblind, people who identify as mad, crazily, or mentally ill, people who are neurodivergent, a term that some folks might know, some folks might also know on like autism or Asperger's spectrum, neurodiverse, and people with chronic or severe illness. So all those folks, including folks in deaf communities, this is kind of a dangerous thing to do, but I'm going to say, as a woman of color, as a person of color, I feel like there's parallels to the term people of color, where we are all, as people who do not have normative bodies, people who are impacted by ableism and the fact that we don't live, we're not like the normal white straight cis guys with able bodies, right, who have money. However, within this whole term, we face really different kinds of oppression and difference, and we don't automatically know each other's issues or how to be in alliance to each other. An example I'll give is like when I'm out with one of my friends who's a wheelchair user, it's really common that people who are able-bodied will talk to me not to my friend. When they talk to them, they will talk to them like they are a small child. Their disability is hyper-visible, and they are seen as hyper-small, hyper-not an adult because of that disability. I've been using a cane for 15 years. I still have able-bodied friends who go, what happened? And I'm like, 1997, bitch. Okay. So a lot of folks I don't like the term invisible disability for myself because I actually feel like it's more accurate that our disabilities are invisibilized, or that people refuse to become aware of them. I can look at a friend and I'm like, you're in like level 7 pain right now, huh? Because I know how to do that. And that's the thing that I want to say too, is that my friend Naima Lowe, who's African American, disabled, queer scholar, fat femme, this is another, I really like using Facebook posts as data. She was like, one of the things the able-bodied need to realize is like, those of us who are disabled have already survived the worst things in the world. And she's like, I don't even necessarily mean pain or illness. I mean ableism. I mean being shut out of movements in society. I mean being like, the able-bodied world, I can't work a 9-to-5 job, so I have to figure out ways to be creative otherwise. Often, and this is again very basic, but I think that one of the sites that people will run into a lot around disability is kind of what I call the Facebook event access note struggle, where somebody goes, hey, there's this event, and you go, hey, that's great, can you post the accessibility info? And there's crickets, or then 2 days before they're like, oh, sorry, yeah, it's not, we'll try again next time. And then they're like, why are you angry? And you're like, this has happened 5 million times. And then often some of the pushback that disabled folks get, whether we're at a conference that's inaccessible, I don't know how many folks are familiar with AWP, the Association of Writers and Poets, but and I don't know how many people, but it's a big literary conference every year where you're supposed to go and like get overwhelmed and maybe get a publishing contract. This year, they refused to accept any workshop or panel with disability or chronic illness in the subject matter. And it also happened on the face of their executive director making some wildly racist statements publicly, and then kind of being like, oh, whatever. And I have a bunch of friends who just went. There was an amazing disability caucus, but one of my friends who's a new chair user was like, yeah, I rolled up to the access table and was just like, where's the elevator? And the volunteers were like, we don't really know. So, some of this stuff is actually very basic, but it's not basic. It's not basic when it happens over and over again. And getting back to what I was saying about disability as a skill rather than a deficit, one of the pieces of pushback that we often get when we ask for the most basic access is it's too expensive. disabled people are mostly poor, and I know for a lot of us, our response is, I can make a ramp out of like tin foil and some like old cardboard. You can go fundraise for it. Having said all that, there's a lot of allegiance building and understanding of each other's cultures and needs that we need to do within this, and that's also part of the work. For me, the work is less. I mean, it's so important. It is important to push back in the able-bodied world on ableism everywhere. Like, I feel like the same way, I feel about it the same way I feel about being a feminist of color. I'm more interested in working out our stuff as Black, Indigenous, and people of color who are queer, trans, and two-spirit than battling white people who are racist all the time. I'm still going to do it, but I'm more interested in building with ourselves because it's my priority. And also, I'm chronically ill. I don't have that much energy. It really makes you cut out the bullshit. So, real quick, and then I'm gonna read some memoir, and then we can tell some stories. A lot of the images, insofar that people are aware of disability movements at all, are images like this. So, for folks who can see, there's a poster that's from the People's Movement History Project of the group ADAPT, which is a direct action disability rights group. So the Americans with Disability Act passed in the 90s and provided for a very basic level of physical access in new buildings for people who can sue if it's not there. This is the legal system. A lot of people now, it's a very common experience where if someone who's a wheelchair user gets on an accessible bus, for example, someone will be like, isn't that nice they put those ramps in? Yeah, disabled people did 15 years of direct action, including things like a whole bunch of physically disabled folks crawled up the steps of the Federal Department of Vocational Rehab to draw attention to the fact of how inaccessible buildings are. People locked down in that building for 2 months. ADAPT would lock down in front of subways and streetcars and buses that were inaccessible with their power chairs and wheelchairs. Yeah, this is not things that people think of when they think of disability. I'm really grateful for all of those folks for doing that organizing. And this is Ed Roberts up here. He was a part of a group that's known as the UC Berkeley Rolling Quads. They're pretty much like white, physically disabled cis guys who survived polio, who fought to get into UC Berkeley in the 60s. Ed's story is that he was like, I applied 9 times. On the 9th time they let me in. The first 8 times they literally said, we tried having cripples before and it didn't work. You've got this bunch of white, physically disabled cis guys who are at UC Berkeley during the time of the Black Panthers, La Raza, Asian and Native organizing, queerness, feminism, and they get radicalized by all of those movements. And when they graduate, they go on to form what's known as the independent living movement because they're like, we don't want to go back to our nursing home or our mom's garage. We want to live out in community, and we need things like paid physical care attendants. We need to have curb cuts in the sidewalks. Those didn't used to exist just to be able to get around. I'm grateful for all these folks. There's also a reason that a lot of disabled scholars have talked about why the movement got so single issue. In a lot of ways, it was because other movements were like, we don't really care about disability, though that's not always true. As you see Huey Newton talking in a huge position paper in around 1971 about how important disability activism was, and how the Black Panthers came to the San Francisco Department of Rehab when it was being occupied by disabled people in the 70s and brought them food for 2 months. I mean, you see, there are many histories of Alliance building you can look at. However, that's one story, and then I would say that there are many other disability justice stories that aren't told within that story, and I want to talk about Harriet Tubman as one of them. So, Harriet Tubman, many times when we think of her as a Black freedom fighter, as somebody, thank God, have people seen Crystal's drunk history lesson on Harriet Tubman? You should really Google it. It's really beautiful. It's really, Crystal is one half of a podcast called Yes! All right, I was getting in trouble on Amtrak because I was laughing too hard because I was listening to it. But okay, she just did a whole thing on Funny or Die about Harriet Tubman. But anyway, bringing it back, people, insofar as people know about Harriet Tubman, we know of her as somebody who was an enslaved Black person who escaped slavery and went back to plantations, burnt them down, and liberated thousands of enslaved Black folks. We don't often hear about the disability story, and we don't often hear about it as actually being foundational to her as a liberation worker. So her story is that when she was 13 years old and she was still enslaved, she threw herself between another enslaved person and the overseer who was about to whip him. She got hit in the head with the whip and got a traumatic brain injury. And that affected her for the rest of her life, but not in the ways that people might be expecting. She did deal with impairment and difference, but she was very clear. She was like, yeah, nobody expected that little crippled Black girl, quote unquote, to be a threat. So I used that to evade scrutiny by white folks, by police, by people who were trying to pursue fleeing Black folks who were fleeing slavery. And she also, people were like, oh, she's crazy. And she was like, you go ahead and think that. She also started receiving visions that she said were from God after her traumatic brain injury that would show her this is the route to go to take folks to freedom by, right? So I think this is a really important story because this is somebody who set plantations on fire, who freed folks, who was a soldier, who was a warrior, who was a black, disabled, quote unquote crazy, seen as crazy, female identified person. And you know, I love the word intersectionality. In some, I think it's way too dry for what it's trying to convey. And I would rather tell this story as an example of what many folks have said when they say we don't lead single issue lives. They're all together, they're all combined. 12:02. Okay, let's keep it going. So that's one story. Oh, did I cut out that quote that I like? Never mind. In terms of a little bit, what does this look like in practice? I want to talk about creating collective access, which is the collective I was part of in Detroit and Oakland. This is an image of like the first iteration of us. Creating collective access happened where some of us who were physically disabled, queer folks of color, were getting ready to go to the United States Social Forum, which is a big movement gathering of tens of thousands of people in Detroit, Michigan in 2010. And like many disabled people who are trying to go into overwhelming able-bodied movement spaces, around 3 weeks before we were talking to each other, we're like, oh God, we're gonna die, it's gonna be awful. You know, the bus isn't gonna be accessible, there will be no food, I will get very tired, my legs are gonna give out, travel is very exhausting, the march is gonna be 12 miles long for no reason, all those things. And then we started saying, well, okay, we already know this, and we're all used to kind of dealing with our access needs as our personal issue, because right now in society, that's what it's seen as. It's seen as like you have your personal needs, and you get your personal accommodation letter, and you figure it out. It's not seen as a collective responsibility, and it's not seen as something that disabled people can do for each other, because we're always seen as the people who are being done to and done for, rather than people who can do for each other and be agents, right? So we were like, why don't we put up a WordPress and go, hey, are you disabled and coming to Detroit? Do you want to link up? And we created this thing called Creating Collective Access that was an experiment in disabled care and organizing by and for disabled people of color. What this looks like in practice are things like, you know, one of the folks in that group was like, yeah, who's neurodivergent was like, but who's physically able-bodied was like, okay, the nearest sandwich shop is a mile away. Let me go take someone's spare portable wheelchair, wheel it over there, fill it up with sandwiches, and do it back so everybody can get food. It meant that we were a very apparent block in movement space because we moved as slowly as our slowest member, and there were a lot of us, so we would take up the entire, you know, width of this area. And like, I would say many disabled people have an experience of being left behind really literally, and that can be in a march, and that can also be in life. And the wording is often like, oh, well, you know, you should go someplace that's, you know, more suited for your needs, whereas the rest of the movement just rolls on by. It was really powerful to be like, we're going to actually refuse to abandon each other. It was very powerful to do concrete actions, to meet with disabled activists in Michigan, and to also sit with each other and just sit in a circle and be like, tell me about your life, which many of us had never had a chance to really be like, here's my disabled, Korean, adoptee, queer, gender non-conforming life in Fayetteville, North Carolina, right? And out of that, there's a conference that happens in Detroit also that happened that year right before the U.S. Social Forum called the Allied Media Conference, which you should definitely check out. It's gotten kind of huge, and it's, I would say I liked it better when it was small because I think we could hold a lot of things better or with less challenges. But Detroit's also changing a lot, and we're being impacted by, I never thought I would say this, but the gentrification of some parts of Detroit. Well, so there's cops now on the campus where we've always been. But what I was going to say about that is that we did a lot of organizing with the AMC to work around on making real access, not fucked up access. I just want to say, like, in their program guide, they say, and this is very different than the kind of access model that I'm sure you've run into, that's, we're required to comply with the ADA, so if you need any accommodations, tell me the first day of class. Where instead we say, we work to make the AMC more accessible to more folks every year, because we know that our movements suffer without the brilliance of parents, of people with disabilities, of trans and queer people, non-English speakers, people living in poverty, young people and elders, and everyone else surviving and creating solutions in the middle of, in the face of adversity. That's a really different model than like, okay, call this guy, you know, he'll help you out with a wheelchair bus. You know, it's like, and it's actually understanding that access is a series of technologies and tools and skills. It's not automatic, and that we build it more every year. Does this make sense? Okay, sweet. Okay, I come out of spoken word, so I understand the point where people hit what I call poetry death, which is, it doesn't matter how good the poetry is, you've been listening to someone for 3 hours, and you need to go do something else. So I'm going to segue a little bit, if that's okay, and I want to talk a little bit about my memoir, Dirty River, and about memoir writing as a queer disabled femme of color as a political project. I'll read a little bit, and then we can do Q&A, because I know some folks have to leave at 12:30. Thank you for listening. Thank you for bearing witness and being present and being all of this. So this book took 10 years to write, and there's a lot of reasons for that. One of which was racism and sexism and ableism in the publishing industry, and and there are also a lot of other reasons. But I started off writing this book because I wanted to tell my story of queer brown femme survivorhood, because as a survivor of childhood sexual abuse and partner violence and lots of stuff, I was like, okay, when you look out there at the books that are out there, there's Push, and there's 3 other books, and there's a lot of books written by survivors who are like white, cis, queer women from the 80s. And I'm grateful to any survivor who writes a book about their life, but I was like, I don't see a lot of stories of intersectional survivorhood out there that also talks about disability and what's seen as mental illness or craziness. And some of it, I mean, to be honest, when I started out, I was like, part of how I dealt with my survivorhood was like, I literally ran away from the United States and moved to Toronto on the Greyhound to be with my partner. And, you know, and there's a lot of crazy shit. I mean, it's like that Junot Diaz quote where he goes, yeah, when Dominicans write a book, it's like, I never believed that shit that happened, and it's not once upon a time. And it was kind of like that. But I also wanted to specifically capture some histories of queer people of color organizing in the 90s that I was like, wow, you know, and this is for those of you who are not in your 40s like I am, like, it'll catch up with you, like, all the shit that was really like, yeah, this is just happening. Time goes really quickly, and you're going to look up and you're going to be like an elder, and it's going to be really fucking weird. And, you know, technology changes, and then the movements that you were part of that were really crucial, especially if they're by oppressed people, get erased, right? So I wanted to write it down, and I wanted to write some survivor stories that are all the crazy shit that I've seen of like queer POC survivorhood, where it's not so much the therapist and like the pastel walls and like, you know, that kind of like 6 weeks of therapy and you're good kind of vision, but it's more like, yeah, me and my 3 best friends made a Diwali on these like, you know, $3 gulab jamans and some rice we burned, and we hung out with each other and we smoked a joint and we talked about all the hard things. Yeah, I wanted to write that thing. I wanted to write about what it's like when you have a relationship with another queer brown survivor that is both liberatory and amazing and about your survivorhood, and also gets violent, and you're also trying to end the prison industrial complex, and they're your immigration sponsor, and you're like, this is great. It's really cool. I think that, you know, there's like a 5-page thank you list at the back of this, and that's not just me being cute, it's because it was books that were by, and I think this doesn't get talked about a lot, I think that for me it was less theory and more memoir that really shaped my life as a queer femme of color organizer. It was reading, you know, Zami by Audre Lorde back in the day, and then fast forwarding and reading A Map of Home by Randa Jawar, who's an incredible queer Palestinian femme, single mom, writer, and so many people in between. I think that, you know, the subtitle is called The Queer Femme of Color Dreaming Her Way Home, but a lot of the wording that I used a lot of the time was roadmap. Like, I wanted to write a roadmap, one roadmap, not the roadmap of this life. And I think that for me, as a nerd, as a weirdo, as a survivor, as someone who was much more comfortable with books than with people for many years, and was isolated, and had parents who had a 9 p.m. curfew because they're immigrants, you know, and they were like, you're not going to go out in the streets of Worcester, and I was like, okay, you know, and then you try and make the sheet rope and it breaks, and then my mom would wake up at anything, she's like, what the fuck is that? And I was like, okay, yeah. Books, I mean, this is corny, but like books really are role models, and I think in the absence of having queer, black, and brown femme or disabled or whatever stories of lives, we don't know what our lives can be, right? Real quick, 2 more things I want to say before I read are that I co-directed with my friend Sherry Gillette a collective called Mangoes with Chili for 10 years, which is a collective of queer and trans people of color doing performance art. We started off, Sister Spit has changed a lot. Now it's mostly black and brown folks. Back in the day, I was very bitter because I'm like, this is like 9 white people and 1 person of color, and you think that's okay, and it's not. So yeah, we rented a minivan even though no one really knew how to drive, and we like hit the road. And then we were like, does Sister Spit get stopped at the border like this? I don't know. And then we were in Yuma, and we were like, oh, we're getting stopped inside the United States, and yeah. But one thing that we said a lot was we were like, we believed in this work as cutie pop performance artists, we're writing ourselves into history. And we really believed in performance art and writing by and for queer and trans folks of color as activism, and it was something that often grant reports didn't really, they were just, I mean, we got rejected a lot, and we were like, no, this is actually, it's actually really saving people's lives to see not just their story on stage that maybe they haven't seen before, but also other stories of other communities that are queer folks of color that they haven't seen. It's also, there's so much about memory and refusing to forget our dead, our ancestors, our murdered folks, and being able to take up space on stage and be like, this is the world that we're in, this is the shit we're struggling with, this is the world that we want to see. So that's what I tried to do with this book, but for 10 years I got told, queer people of color don't buy books, it's too small of a market. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It was, I could say more, but I don't want to waste my time bitching about fucked up people. So I'm going to read this story, and it's about when my dad came out to me when he was drunk, when I was 22. Because, you know, what I think this isn't always as true as it has been, but I know that for my generation, of queer migrants, of queer folks of color, we were often told when we talked to our families about being queer that, especially if we're migrants, like, you know, this is some crazy white people shit, if we just stayed back home, you would be fine. And, you know, and then so when my dad actually, I mean, and there's some of this made instance, and my father had this best friend when he was living in London that was always referred to, it was like one word, as David from Trinidad, he was really pretty. You know, like David from Trinidad, he was really pretty. And my mom was like, yeah, David from Trinidad, he was so pretty. He was so upset when we got married. I never understood why. And then, yeah, it's shit to hear when you're 9 and you're like, yeah. And then I grew up and I was like, they lived together for 8 years, you know, okay. And, you know, stuff. And my dad would have these friends and go on drives with them, and my mom would be really angrily cleaning the house all night. And like, you know, you put things together. So I say all to say it was important for me to say that my queer Sri Lankanness is not an accident, and it actually is me carrying the lineage of my ancestors. And whether or not my grandmother, my Abama, was queer, she was like a femme, got married off to a first cousin at 32, like union organizer, seen as slutty, you know, I mean, they were, like, my family was known as the Wild Elvis girls. They ran around, they rode bicycles, and, you know, they showed their ankles. It was like 1931. Okay, so I'm being that person who says too much about the book and then doesn't read it, so I'm gonna read it, okay. When I came out to my dad, I was 21 and I was about to leave them forever. We were in the basement where he always was. On the old brown couch I used to jump on when I was 6 with all the kids from the block, all the lights out, a tumbler of Johnny Walker Red by his right hand, because that's what he did on the weekends. I can't touch scotch now, or I can, but I don't want to, because while I'm my father's daughter in so many ways, there's so many ways I don't want to just be like him. He was Johnny Walker, the History Channel on low, staying up till 4 a.m. when he finally would pass out for 2 hours and then get up at 6 to catch the early commuter rail into Boston, where he'd finally gotten a job. For the record, I wasn't planning on actually having the big queer conversation with him. I was actually trying to have an awkward as hell conversation about me getting married to Raphael so I could get papers so I could stay in Canada. I figured in this way he'd understand. We changed countries so many times in so many sketchy ways, it was less of a shame and more of a family tradition. This is what I remember. I remember him saying, but what if you want to do something that Raphael doesn't want you to do? It's very serious, marriage. I remember laughing at him and saying, oh yeah, that's what it's like for you and Ma, right? I remember telling him, remember, it's for the papers, we're both queer. And I remember him saying in the dark, quietly, well, what do you think I did before I married your mother? In the hostels? In London, where he lived with his super best, super pretty friend, David from Trinidad, for years before he met my mother. You do whatever you want, you just get married. I let the silence be after that. I knew there couldn't be any more discussion, but I also knew that my father had told me that in proud Sri Lankan tradition, he got it on with men. Before I left, I found my dad's porn stash. I was in the attic trying to figure out everything I'd take with me because this was the last chance I would get. I'd already snuck my birth certificate, social security card, and passport out of my mother's triple lock filing cabinet after searching for the key to the hour she was at the supermarket. Oh yeah, this is about running away from your abusive family who you still kind of love story as well, just FYI. I was picking which books, which photographs, which every little precious childhood thing I could pack with me in the van, what I could get away with taking, and what I absolutely needed. And in my searching, I saw a pile of books in the corner of the attic that were instantly recognizable. The covers of every single best American erotica anthology from the mid-90s. On a Bed of Rice, that first Asian American porn collection with a terrible name. It was like they were stir-fry. All that mid-90s bisexual porn revolution tasteful shit you could buy at a Borders. And flipping through, I thought, shit, these aren't mine. These have my father's name in the front. My dad was a pretty man. In his youth, a skinny, brown, elegant boy, tall and long with big, deep eyes, skin the color of tobacco leather, thick brown, straight black jute hair, all angles and long legs. Now he was middle-aged and going silver with more sad lines around his eyes and mouth from everything Massachusetts had done to him. Still mournful and fine. When we went to Provincetown for day trips in the summer, Provincetown is like, it used to be a queer small town, he'd get hit on constantly. He'd act like he hated it, but he'd still walk ahead of my mother and me, strolling, hands behind his back. Only man to wear a pink shirt who said he was straight to P-Town in 1985. Was he remembering Galface Green, the Sri Lankan park, or the beach near Kuala Lumpur? Was he remembering a different sun, browner men, the train tracks behind Bangladesh train station, cock and mouth on his knees, 1965? This is one of those things that we'll know and we'll never really know. But if Freud is right and all and anything other than an asshole, I guess it makes sense that my father's child grew up to love brown, faggoty, sexy-ass, masculine people, any gender of queer. This is before I came out as femme for femme, but okay. On a white painted shelf in their living room, positioned among my dad's model soldiers, his pathetic attempts at trying to be butch, were some of his family photographs. He tried to say that he didn't want them out there, but my mom had overrode them, so there they all were. The photographs taken on the first visit he had to see his family in years, the only one we could afford in 1989. Tall and uncomfortable next to those tiny little brown wizened parents staring at the Australian sun. But then there were the older ones, the ones in sepia, the ones that were the only things my grandmother had brought with her in two big brown leather albums when she and my grandfather got on the last boat out of KL in 1942 when the Japanese invaded. That was the only thing they'd had from that middle-class Ceylonese life, two big albums of all the ancestors. There's one portrait of Grandma and her two sisters and their little brother, grinning and spoiled. It's really clear this was a family where they kept having sex till they had a son. All three of the sisters wear long 1930s dresses, European meets subcontinent meets islander. The photos is sepia like their skin. They all have bobs. They all ride bicycles. They all show their legs. None of them are smiling. They all look angry. They all look like they don't want to be there. My grandmother, Jackie, stares the camera down, unsmiling, and so does Rini, the darkest one of all of them except for my great-grandpa. I picked this one. I slip it out of its frame and into my armpit because no one's going to notice. It makes it past the border checkpoint. I set it up in my one-room apartment. I'm stealing my ancestors. They're going to come with me to Toronto. You know, it's like 12:19, so maybe we should have Q&A now and pee and stuff, and it can be as awkward as you need it to be because I'm awkward and Q&A is always awkward. Everyone's like, ugh. My mom did a lot of Scorpio in her church. She was like, we can all die tomorrow. Just say it. And I was like, okay. So that helps. It's great. Yeah, so does anyone have anything they want to say? You're cool. Thanks. I don't know if you said that. It was just like a inspiration. Hi. Bye, everybody. Bye. might never come back to Colgate again.
Right.
Yeah.
I have, it's a really broad question, but it goes back to disability justice, and I'm sure you've noticed this campus isn't very friendly to like the physically disabled, and I don't think we pay enough attention to like hidden disabilities as well, and like neurodivergence and stuff like academic institutions don't do that. And I'm also a member of one of the LGBTQ organizations on campus, and our meeting space is like even less accessible than the rest of this campus. And in like trying to like talk about intersectionality and like whatever that means, but like trying to promote it, I don't like I have a lot of trouble doing that when it's so clear that where we are is just like not very helpful to that cause.
Right.
And so I don't really even know what my question is.
No, like, what do you do about that?
Yeah, I guess.
Well, okay, so, I mean, I guess this is my soapbox being clear. I think I'm kind of being PhD on a soapbox right now, so that's okay. I mean, I think that, you know, what you're saying is really common on university campuses, and I think that, you know, I don't know the entire history of Colgate, but I'm guessing this is an elite university that was founded by white settler dudes to, you know, keep their power concentrated. And, you know, because of organizing, and, you know, what's it again?
Like missionaries for missionary work.
Yeah, totally, yeah. So there's that, right? So you have, I mean, I feel like with elite universities, they're universities where they were designed to hold power and where they're not really interested in changing it. And, you know, Frederick Douglass said power that concedes nothing without demand, it never has and never will. But so you've got those origins and you've got like actually the whole ableism of academia in general, where in order to get into elite university, you've got to have a high SAT score, you've got to keep up, you've got to be competitive, you've got to beat everybody else out, et cetera, et cetera. So you've got that in there in the bones, and I think that like, but I also think that what's true is that wherever there's oppression, there is resistance, there has been resistance. So I would be interested, first of all, in looking to see if there's been a history of disability organizing or activism on campus, you know, on its own or within the gender centers, within the LGBT center, because that's within, like, if there's like a Black, Latino, PSC multicultural center, because that's often where stuff happens. You know, at UW, we have like 20-year timeline that students researched and developed of disability organizing on campus, which I would not have known of and which most people would not have known of. Like, I didn't know people were doing shit 20 years ago. I think that you kind of have to do a two-pronged thing. I think that in general, you know, when the revolution comes, this campus will be free and we will have a radical reimagining of what intelligence is and how studying happens and what a bachelor's degree is for. And I think when we're working towards that goal, which I know is going to happen like next week, totally, I think that you can start with actually surveying students on campus and being like, what are the needs, right? You know, because I don't think it's like, I think that often what happens when people are starting to put disability into their framework is they're like, okay, we don't know any wheelchair users, but we're going to make sure the space is wheelchair accessible. Right. Which doesn't mean there's not folks who are wheelchair users out there or folks who are in pain, folks who are working with steps, etc. But I think it's one thing to kind of do just like access by the yard without actually doing an assessment of like what people need. And also knowing that there's a lot of shame and barriers to people even saying, coming out about being disabled, right? Because of the enormous stigma. Because, I mean, it can go different ways. Like you know, there were two folks who were UW graduates who now work at Seattle University who came into a workshop at my workplace about how to do an elevator speech where you tell your professor in 3 minutes or less what your accommodations are. And one of them's like, yeah, I have cerebral palsy, but when I came to, and she's like, I've always been disabled, and, you know, apparently so. When I came to campus, I would be like, stop sending me emails about disability, I just want to be normal, I want to be like everybody else. And the other person was like, right, I have generalized anxiety, people can't tell. I had the different experience where I had to really come out about it and be like, oh yeah, this really counts as a disability. And I'm not betraying my mom because her life was harder by coming out and being like, yes, I am a second generation Pacific Islander per woman, I have anxiety, it's okay to talk about. So I think like doing that assessment is good. I think actually just starting out by like having discussions where it's like, what are the deals with chronic illness and disability, knowing that it's actually a vulnerable and difficult thing for people to ask for help because we've all been socialized not to do it, and on campuses like this, we've been told that asking for help is a liability, and that means you're not as smart and you're not going to get that recommendation, you know? I think starting there and like moving organically outward with what the needs of the moment are and what the passions are and what feels good is actually going to do a long way. And it can also be something like doing a study group where you go, let me learn more about this stuff. Let's all discuss it and see what changes. Yeah, I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, cool. Anybody else have like a question or a comment or a thought? Yeah.
You've written for these three really iconic feminist
Yeah.
collections. Yeah, comic, and your sister. Was that experience community building at all? Was there a sense of a collective? Is there a sense of bringing the authors together? What is that like?
Sure. I mean, I think anytime that you're in a feminist anthology that's like, especially that's led by people of color, that's been my experience. I mean, Colonize This, that came out of Bushra and Daisy's experience in a feminist of color arts collective in New York in the 90s, and they're wanting to speak in the face of, you know, the whiteness of what was being put out there as third wave feminism, and to really create something that would be black and brown feminist voices that were grassroots speaking to each other. Yeah, so I think the whole process was, I remember the book launch happened right, 9/11 happened, and they were both in New York, and I was like, I'm afraid to go into the city right now as like an ethnically ambiguous brown person who, you know, the Islamophobia meter changes, so like, you know, I think for folks like me who are like, could be Muslim, like there's times where it's really intense, there's times where like, they're targeting folks who are bearded, hijab, like, you know, like have Islamic names, etc. So, but at that moment, 6 of my queer-based friends had gotten beat the shit out of right after 9/11 in New York, and we had to do a safety plan to have a book launch, right? And we had to have each other's backs, and that's something that I think is something that, like, when you look at, you know, maybe third wave white cis feminism that they've applied, they're not really having to deal with that the same way. So I think that by necessity we had to do the work of community building, and I think that anytime, as an anthology editor myself with Revolution Starts at Home, that was a process of bringing together, you know, many different kinds of folks who experienced intimate violence in activist communities who were trying to figure out how to deal with it without the state. So we also, that was also a process that took many years of building relationships and building trust, and having folks be like, I thought I was ready, I'm not ready, can I anonymize it? Being like, oh, actually, this version of my piece was true 2 years ago. My understanding of the violence my partner perpetuated has changed, so I actually need to edit it. So yeah, I think community is like a really big and weird and oversimplified word a lot, but I think that in terms of building relationships and also kind of creating like a temporary autonomous zone in the form of the book where people might be isolated, but they can pick that up and be like, here's all these voices, and here's this feminism of color that I need, here's the survivor community of voices that I need. I think in a way, the book itself can be a community. Yeah. Okay, what time is it? Okay, we have 2 minutes or something, but also I can hang out. But is there anybody else who's like has a, yeah?
I would like to hear more about sort of what your vision would be for the ideal in terms of a college or university fully embracing students with disabilities.
Yeah.
My question is coming out of, I'm a professor here,
totally.
But my son is a first-year college student at a very elite place,
right.
And he has Tourette's.
Right.
And just thinking through, the place he goes has an amazing office dedicated to students with disabilities. Probably one of, seen as one of the best among the elite schools. But it's not enough.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great question. So I think that when I think of what I've seen in real life as being more on the accessibility scale, I think that, it's a catch-22, but I think that first of all, schools have to be affordable, right? Because, access, because like for so many of us who are disabled, and there's that paradigm switch where when you have parents who are parenting a disabled child that they didn't know they were expecting an able-bodied kid, there's a narrative of like, this is going to be so expensive, oh God, and that can feed into narratives of like, well, kids with severe disabilities, abortion should be legal in those cases, which is really complicated and which often plays into ableist stuff. Because I'm not a genetic defect, like I think I'm cool, and my friends are cool. And I don't want us to be aborted, but like the truth is because of ableism, access is expensive, so then you have parents who are like, I can't afford to send my kid there, or I'm going to need this financial aid, and there's a lot of competition. Guess what? So you know, being a dual citizen in Canada now, where, you know, which is not a utopia at all, but where there are no private schools and, you know, university education is $5,000 a year, right? Like that, and Ontario just made it so that like they're just gonna grant everybody what they need. That's huge, and it is not a utopia. There's still massive ableism in Toronto universities, but it does level the playing field where there's not so much of the rich and poor divide. And where there is more of a sense there that like universal health care is a real thing, you know? It's still ableist. Like my friend is still trying to fight to stay in Canada because immigration-wise, if you have a physical disability, it's very hard to immigrate because you're seen as a drain on the system, right? And she's having to do this whole compassionate and humanitarian appeal. But I think like things like that are systemic rather than individual are really important. I think, you know, really in specific ways, like I'm gonna say this and then I'm like, I have a lot of, not cynicism, but like I'm cautious about recommending training because I think that people can sit through it and be like, we did the training and that's it. But often, but I do, but I mean, you know, how many people mention the 3-hour mandatory anti-racism training? A lot of people, you know, it's, yeah. But I think that having some kind of, if people who are teaching, who are professors, somewhere in our careers were taught about here's what different disabilities look like, but also here's what different learning styles look like. Here's what access is, and this isn't a side note, like you should build this into all of your classes. And I think also, like one thing I've seen some professors do is to kind of be like actually like that same training I was talking about that we had at my work, one of the trainers were like, yeah, we actually kind of tell students, if you want to, you can disclose what your disability is, but we actually say maybe don't do it because a lot of professors, you say, I have rheumatoid arthritis, they saw it on Oprah once, they think they know what it is. It may not be what your body is at all. It's better for you to be like, I need a chair, you know, or I'm going to need to be out of class sometimes, can I work from a distance perspective? I have an MFA, I've taught academically 1 year, and then I just kind of, you know, became a slacker. Well, I'm not a slacker at all, but I just I can't. And you know, as I really get a lot from the great queer black feminist troublemaker genius Alexis Pauline Gumbs, where she's talked about, actually she's like, I don't want to be another black woman in academia who dies of cancer in her 50s, but I get a plaque with my name over the wall, but the health insurance was so good. And she's like, I'm not saying that no one should be in academia, but I think that we should look at what the health impacts on marginalized folks within academia are. So I think that that's part of it because, you know, so many professors I know are also disabled or are chronically ill or going to become chronically ill, and we have to hide that to keep our jobs. So I think like doing things like undoing shame, you know, and circling back to what I was saying about, which is a big thing, and I think circling back to what I was saying about, you know, the one-size-fits-all approach, I think just really teaching professors that it's not about memorizing everybody's medical needs, but it's about having an attitude of like, hey, just tell me what you need and we'll work it out, and what you need doesn't have to be static. You know, if you're sick, you're sick, and we will work it out, and I'll also let you know what my limits as a professor are who might be chronically ill or a parent or all of the things. And then there are things like that are really concrete, like, you know, the most basic access of like ramps and accessibility and elevators and things that are not 40 miles from each other, but also pacing. And, you know, free childcare on campus, big deal, you know, like medical care that makes sense, you know, an understanding of illness. I could go on and on, but I think like all those and economic access are really, really, truly important. And being able to have space where like it's okay to slow down. I mean, I think that like that's, a lot of it is about unpacking what is a week. You know, because some people, I mean, and for me as an example, like, I am neurodivergent, but I do have the kind of brain where I was able to memorize everything. I was able to get a 5 on my fucking, you know, what are those things? Now I can't remember shit, but I never had. And my mom, who's a working class genius, was like, she's like, you're going to go wherever gives you a full ride, and you're going to get out in 3 years, and you're just going to do it and get out, and it's going to suck and be toxic, but you're just going to get the fuck out as quickly as possible. It would have been cool if I could have had a learning environment that didn't necessitate that, and that's true for a lot of folks. And I think also just like there's plenty of people who are brilliant out there, but who don't have that kind of brain that can compartmentalize and like get in the top 1% of the SAT, who need to have their genius recognized when we reimagine, if this is supposed to be a space of learning, we need to reimagine what we think of as smart and stupid. Yeah, which will just mean dismantling all of academia. But in the short term, I mean, I'm really glad that your son has an access center. That's good, because one thing I will say that I think is true is that on paper right now, every university in the States is mandated to have an access center. And they kind of roughly break down into two types. There's the type that does try and fight for the students, and there's the one that protects the university, right? And too many students have the one that protects the university, and where the people who are working at it have no training in ableism or disability, and who will say really well-meaning things like, well, everyone can do everything. And I go, well, actually, I can't run a marathon. So if that's the requirement, I'm fucked. And like, what access means is not that everyone can be able-bodied if they just try, but that actually we are able to be present as who we are. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.